I was interested in politics, and I love history. My family, where I was raised, exposed to the history of our country, and so government and history were just fascinating to me. So I would say, geez, middle school or something like that, certainly by high school, I felt that I was interested in politics. I was going to be involved in the legislative process. And what better way to do that? I had researched, and at that time, like 90% of all the members of Congress, for instance, were all lawyers. So I looked at the law as a means, initially, of positioning myself so I would be qualified to run for elective office, and that was at a very young age. When I went to law school, graduated, I had a military commitment. And in the military, you are really curtailed what you can do politically. Prior to that, all during college, undergraduate school, I was involved in school campaigns, political campaigns at the national level during the Kennedy years. And so I was inspired, I think, as so many young people, by a lot of our leaders at that time. Since I could not be involved politically as a regular Army officer, which I was, and I was in the JAG Corps, the Judge Advocate General's Corps, I started prosecuting, and I was a defense lawyer. As a prosecutor, I did civil practice in the law, the Army's equivalent of civil practice, and I just grew to it, and I loved the battle in the courts. I loved being in the arena and didn't lose, and enjoyed doing what I felt was right, and I gravitated more towards the prosecution because it really bothered me when people were hurt. I did not like seeing people hurt, and prosecutors, we're in the victims, and the people that we represent are the ones who were preyed upon, beaten, or had a loved one killed, or whatever it might be. And I just gravitated more, just was much more comfortable in that. So I think as I grew older, when I finally decided to leave the Army, I resigned my regular Army commission, and I've been serving as a judge in the military, as a prosecutor, they call it a trial counsel, and as a defense counsel. So I had been exposed to all elements. I just immediately went into prosecutorial work and found great satisfaction there, and I think was very, very successful. And that's really what was motivating me. I really felt that as a prosecutor, I could help someone. I had the good fortune of, after I was in Genesee County, Michigan, and I headed a strike force against organized crime many, many years ago, I decided to come back out to California. And then Bill Curtis, who was the district attorney of Monterey County, he hired me, and I came from Michigan and came back to him, and I was his assistant for 14 years. Got caught up in politics, and when Bill Curtis took the bench, he was appointed as a judge to the bench by the governor. I was his assistant, and I think many people assumed that I would be his successor. Well, in the world of politics, I learned very quickly that those 5 supervisors, 3 of them did not select me. And that was an eye-opener. That was an eye-opener. I thought I was the best qualified. I'd been the best schooled, highly motivated. And so I left, went into private practice, never cashed in my retirement from PERS because I just knew that I was coming back. And things did not go well in the district attorney's office at that time, and I had all kinds of law enforcement people and friends coming to me and say, run, run. And so after 5 years in private practice in a law firm where I was a partner, I decided to run, and I guess the rest is history. I was elected overwhelmingly my first term, and subsequently 6 terms unopposed, and that's why I decided to run for the district attorney, come back to what I loved and what I felt I was best at, which was helping the community and helping people who do not ask to be victims of crime. I am still as much committed to helping the victims. I love Monterey County. I grew to love it. I love our diversity. I love all the people and everything. And the way I could contribute, and that's what public service is. That's what we all are about. But there's another element besides just helping victims. And the district attorney is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. There are 58 elected district attorneys. That's it. In the whole state of California, we're 37, 38 million people. We have the Attorney General, who is the chief law enforcement officer for the state of California. And with that title comes the opportunity to wield tremendous power. And I would not be truthful if I said I did not enjoy having that power. It's how you utilize the power that is so important. And I began my career realizing that I had the opportunities to make changes in our community that no one else could make. And from my humble opinion, my decisions impact the whole community. People had asked me, why didn't you go for a judgeship? Well, judges are I have a great deal of respect. They're part of our system. We've had some great judges here in this county, but their decisions normally only impact the parties and the case in front of them at the trial level. Not the appellate level, but at the trial level. As a district attorney, I could start like my truancy program, which I just devoted a tremendous amount of energy to. And I feel that we have made more of an impact on our community by keeping young students in school. Over 7,000 of these students. We work hard with the schools, and I had to go out and build those relationships with the school. I had to beg for money, and trust me, I was on my knees a lot. We have the largest and the most aggressive truancy program in the state of California for district attorneys. And people don't realize that about us, but that's using the power of the office to effectuate a program, to put it together, to implement it, and to really do good. Other examples of power is we live in a beautiful county, and we have certain laws. The district attorney can utilize her discretion and power to devote resources where you want to. I believe in protecting the environment, because why do people come to Monterey County and visit? It's the beauty of the county. And so we have worked, and we've been very, very aggressive in the protecting Monterey's environmental beauties. And that doesn't mean that there can't be balance. And I'm always, amused again that on the one side, we have the developers, and the other side we have the environmentalists. Somewhere, someone has to have the ability to work and enforce the laws. So power, I think, is very important if you use it for good and don't abuse it. Elected officials who get into trouble and who end up getting prosecuted maybe by the district attorney, it's because they've abused their power, if you stop and think about it. So. When you generally talk about a case, that's narrowing it down in terms of the influence. The impact is on the people. certainly like any lawyer, trial lawyer, you have certain cases that have been significant in your career. I would say that I am a student of the law. I believe in adherence to the law. And I believe that if people are dissatisfied, unhappy with something, that we should, in our country, we should go through the legislative process and change the law. And you can do that by voting in, voting out representatives. So I don't know if there is any seminal case that made me go one way or the other. I just would like to think that I have followed the law to the best of my ability, and I've tried to have my office do that, because that's what we should be doing. We should be looking at matters based on the law and the facts. I have some personal cases in the military. I still believe I was the trial counsel, prosecutor for the longest case in the history of the U.S. Army. I take great satisfaction in, I think, being a good prosecutor, marshaling the evidence, and being persuasive enough to convince the jury to convict. Here in this office, earlier on in my career, I had some fascinating cases that I feel very fortunate that I was given the opportunity to try them, and very, very difficult cases. The one case that jumps out amongst the murder cases and everything was the German couple. It's been 25 years ago or something like that. And what struck me was it showed me the strength and the power of the human spirit to live. And the surviving victim there, her partner or companion, was murdered. It was kind of like, it would have been a perfect crime. And not going into all the details, but she had the will to live and suffered permanent injuries. And 7 years later, we were able to put that case together. But I looked at her, and her overwhelming desire to survive, even though she was right on death's edge when she was found by a couple that were hiking back down in Los Padres. That struck me with the strength of human beings, and that I, as a prosecutor, I can validate that effort and that sacrifice by holding people accountable. I believe in accountability, and judges get paid to determine sentences, and having been a judge myself, that is the hardest thing I think in the world to do, is for a judge to, with all the power of the state, to determine what is a righteous and a just decision for the defendant in front of you, and taking into account the victim and the community as a whole. So there's, there have been cases, and let me just mention this last one, that really, again, it's just finished, the Curiel and the Huntsman case. And that surviving child, referred to as Jane Doe, that lifts your spirit and makes you, as a prosecutor, and I think a law enforcement member, makes you want to do everything right and work as hard as you can to bring the evidence to the court. And if you have the righteous case, you try to convince the judge or the jury of the righteousness of your case and our legal standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And that case touched this community. We have had cases like that that have really touched this community. I'm not going to go into any detail, but we have the People v. Hollyfield, the Christina Williams case. That was another case that just captured the spirit of our community. They had been visiting the United States for 30 days and had a wonderful exposure to our wonderful country coming from the East Coast.
Right.
And they were pulled off up top of Nacimiento Ferguson above the fog.
Right.
And they were attacked, assaulted, raped, and then tied up in the car, and the car was pushed off the cliff into the canyons, and you couldn't see it from anywhere. The perfect murder. And the female victim, she somehow or another survived with broken arms, legs, and she slid down that mountain during the summertime, down a creek bed, just dropping from boulder to boulder with everything broken. And somehow or another she got down, I think it was to the Pine Creek Trail or something like that, where a couple that happened to be professors from back east who were hiking, who found her, you know, huddled up. And it took us, she survived, but she was, you know, permanently injured. But again, she had the will to live. And I just, to this day, I can't imagine her with all those, you know, her limbs and everything broken, dropping just boulder to boulder. She couldn't walk.
So she had to
slide, and this was a dried out creek bed.
Right.
And it took her 3 days to get out there, but she was right on death's edge, just as Jane Doe was.
Right.
When that deputy sheriff looked in the vehicle and saw her in that vehicle. And that was in the foothills. It was cold. This was, I think, January or something like that, February. When I first came here, it was basically an all-male office. I think we have one female attorney, and I think that I have changed the outlook of our office. I currently have more female prosecutors than I do male. My managers, some of my top managers are females, and and we have attempted diversity. It is difficult to get minorities of color into prosecutorial work for a number of reasons, but we continue to work at it. So I think number one is I broadened the base of my office, so we had different views, and I would like to believe that I always encourage my people to express themselves, gave all of them an opportunity, and I have learned from a lot of my managers, including my female managers and female attorneys, as well as the minorities. So Monterey County demographically has changed over the years. And so I think it's important for us to understand our community. And I urge my young people to get involved with the community, get out, so they're not in their little silo here with the power of the DA, you know, meting out justice, which is what we ultimately achieve, without, you know, a world's view. So that's one thing, I think, in terms of that. Secondly, I think that it's important. I don't think we should lose sight of what the core function is of the district attorney. That is to enforce the law as fairly as you can and to seek justice, and sometimes that's not very popular with the public. What we feel may be just, and we cannot have vigilantes taking the law into their own hand, even though they may be applauded by segments of our community, because we have a process to deal with this. And that process is a legal, you know, criminal justice process, and it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but we work as hard as can be to try to be as right as we can be, and yet be big enough if we have made a mistake, as hard as it is, we're transparent and we say we made a mistake. And so I like to think that we have seen changes coming. I don't necessarily agree with some of the new laws, but I am charged with the responsibility, that's what I'm elected for, is to enforce those laws. And I will do so, again, in the fairest manner that I can. So it is changing, in particular in California. And I can't help but just mention I'm very disappointed in a trend that I am seeing for my colleagues. The district attorney of Sacramento County, she is an outstanding district attorney. Alameda County, she is an outstanding attorney. But outside money, outside the state of California is coming in, and individuals who have lots of money, billionaires, and they are throwing money from the outside on nonpartisan races inside the county. There's a reason that the district attorney, as well as the sheriff, that we are nonpartisan elected officials. I'm a constitutionally mandated official, and the hope and I think is that we would set politics aside and we do our job, and I think that's been part of my success, I think, is that if there's a Republican who's violated the law and we can prove it, we'll prosecute. If it's a Democrat, we will prosecute. I like my people to be colorblind, although now we're being, everyone wants to know the race of everyone that you've charged. I think those are extraneous factors that get in the way of making the right decision. So it goes back to I think that the community should have confidence in their district attorney and understand that the district attorney sets the tone in the office. I am responsible for anything that goes good as well as anything that goes bad. And I have never, ever criticized one of my people publicly. We deal with that internally, and I see it as a teaching moment. I have invested in this community. When I came here, U.S. Army sent me here and exposed me to Monterey County. I know so many people and wonderful people. I belong to so many organizations. I am on so many boards of directors, nonprofits, and I am certainly going to try to stay involved with those, because I think that, again, is giving back to the community. My observations from the very outset were that Monterey County and the people of this county are some of the most caring, giving people that I've ever come across. And they care, they give, either of their dollars or their labor. It doesn't mean we don't have our problems. I mean, the gangs are always there, it seems like, and we keep, plugging away. But I don't know where we'd be if we didn't have the volunteers. And I'll probably still be arguing a little bit. I'm always thinking, and I'll just leave it at that. I think the strengths of a successful district attorney or any leader is who you select to be around you. And I have been very fortunate over the years in having the good wisdom to select some outstanding leaders my chief assistants, my assistants, and I'm not going to go by name, but many of them have left, retired, or died. But so that's an important benefit, I think, or trait to have as a district attorney. Recognize good leadership. And I don't want yes people. I want people who are willing to speak their minds. Otherwise, why have them as a leader? So to me, that is very important. My staff, my victims unit, I love my victims unit. They are so instrumental in our success here because they are victim-centered, you know, and they just work with them and support them. My attorneys, my prosecutors, like any huge office, I'm the largest law firm in Monterey County. You sometimes are surprised. Some people you think are going to be absolute stars, and others come up out of the ranks and are, and some people don't get there. But overall, I've been blessed to have, I think, good, conscientious prosecutors in general who are committed to doing what's right, and I hope they get that from their supervisors and myself. We seek justice. My support staff, we can't function without them. My Bureau of Investigation, they are great investigators, and one of the reasons we're so successful is we have first responders. I think law enforcement is honest in our county, and we have good police, a lot of activity going on. But my investigators, they get that case and take it from a probable cause to arrest to a beyond the reasonable doubt. And hence, we are very, very successful. So it's one big team thing, and I'm going to finish up with, I think if I have any real value, I would hope that people would say that I sought justice, I was fair, I enforced the law, and I was a good listener.